welcome to the February 1st, 2028 CED Office Hour Live, where the Community and Economic Development team here at Central State University and the Extension Department is our way to engage the community, whether you're an individual, or organization, a government agency, whoever, just a stakeholder for the state of Ohio. To just engage and have conversations around all subjects of CED. And as always, I like to give a definition of what community and economic development is, because it's such an interdisciplinary industry, and you can ask 5 different people and get 5 different answers. So we always like to level set and give that. So community and economic development looks at how we live, work, play, thrive, and navigate through all those systems, right? And it touches a whole range. So it touches infrastructure on one end, which is things like housing, development of parks, development of stadiums, public buildings, private housing, affordable housing, all of those kind of things, commercial buildings. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the people development, the human capital development. So that's personal development, helping people to move towards self-sufficiency, workforce development, professional development, connecting people to resources. And then in the middle, the connector between the 2 ends of the spectrum are organizations such as ourselves, such as Pastor Lynch's New Prospect Baptist Church, and just other entities that help connect and make all those things go around, right? And so that is CED. And as CED professionals, no matter what your specialty is, whether it's engineering, workforce development, social service, business development, entrepreneurship, whatever it may be, you look at that whole system and determine, based on your skill set, your bandwidth, and the abilities and resources available, how you can impact that CED system in a sustainable and measurable way, and oftentimes doing things so they can be duplicated over and over again, whether you're there or not. So we're kind of like these system engineers, right? And we tweak things, we bring in innovation and things like that. So that is what CED, we commonly known as CED, but as Pastor Lynch, when he gets in there, he will take out the and explain why it's really community development, not community and economic development. And so I look forward to having that conversation. And before we get started, I would like to introduce the other team members on our CED team here at Central State University. And we have Ambrose Moses and Eric Smith. Would you all unmute your mics and give a quick introduction?
Good afternoon, Ambrose Moses, and I want to say welcome to everyone, and I wanted to sort of add a little bit here, since today is February 1st, first day of Black History Month. I think it's important to sort of recognize the status of Central State University as the newest of the 1890 or land-grant institutions in the country, and also Thomas Monroe Campbell, who was the first extension agent for the Cooperative Extension Service in the United States, out of Tuskegee Institute, Tuskegee University today. And I just think that that's sort of important for us to share that, and that's sort of a connection to us here at CED and the Cooperative Extension Service at Central State. Welcome.
Yeah, great. I'll just say also welcome. Great to be here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Every time I hear Pastor Lynch, I learn something new. And again, Eric Smith, and I'm also part of the Community and Economic Development team here at Central State University Extension.
Thank you. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to you, Pastor Lynch, but I'll give a quick overview because you've done so much. I could introduce you for the next 45 minutes, but it's about you teaching us some new things today. But Pastor Lynch has been a leader in the greater Cincinnati area, as well as nationally, and some international things, especially in this community and economic development space. And also in social justice and all things workforce development, just equal access and opportunity for the residents. And Cincinnati is his home. And so we are blessed to be able to get the fruits of his labor, probably more so than anybody else. And for me, he's taught me a lot about CED work and the value of it when I first got in the field. So whenever I get to interact with him on a formal basis, it's always a pleasure. He's also a pastor emeritus of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute. Um, and he'll be talking about that as well. And the ABCD model is one of, to me, the best and premier models to move towards community and economic development initiatives and programming in a sustainable and impactful way. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, where today we're focusing on building local community and economic development ecosystems. And so that's a lot of comprehensive planning program-wise and touching on that whole CED spectrum that I mentioned earlier. So without further ado, I will turn it over to you, Pastor Lynch, and go forth.
Thank you. Thank you, Amber. Ambrose, good to see you. Eric, always good to see you. And those who are joining us today. So Amber, thank you for the introduction. I am one of the early founders of the Asset-Based Community Development Institute, which started out of Northwestern University, now has moved to DePaul University with my friends John McKnight and Jody Kretzman. Before that, I was a community organizer. I was trained in community organizing at DART, Direct Action and Research Training, down in Miami, Florida, and built an organization here in the city of Cincinnati, which is now called AMOS, with which I just re-engaged not too long ago to continue that work of community building and social justice. So as Eric said, I want to have a conversation. I don't know everything, I don't know it all, but I want to hear your voices as well. So I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to first start with just a basic overview of the New Prospect Baptist Church that I pastor, where I've pastored now for 33 years. So this is going to tell you a little bit about the church. Let me make sure I get this right. All right. It's just this is a few years old.
Our church is open 7 days a week, from 5:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. It's a 7-day-a-week operation. New Prospect's vision in the 28 years that I've been here has always been about building community one family at a time through worship, word, witness, and work. We believe, as the scripture says, that faith without work is dead, and we prove our faith by showing our work, and our work is bearing fruit. Every day we have scores of kids who come here to recreate and be educated. We have elders who come here to find a safe place to learn, to do arts and crafts. We have an art studio in our building. We have a fitness club in our building. We grow produce out back. We have chickens. And we have a number of things that change people's lives. New Prospect has been chosen by the Cincinnati Reds Community Fund to be part of their makeover project. For the last, I think, at least 10 years, the Reds Community Fund, along with other corporate partners, Procter & Gamble, Cincinnati Zoo, Kroger Company, have chosen a site to do a makeover for the benefit of community. A New Prospect this year was chosen. We are blessed. We sit in a community called Roselawn that has no place of, no recreation center. And in the city of Cincinnati, almost every community has a rec center, but Roselawn doesn't, because this was it. The site that we own, these 22 acres, was the community center for Roselawn. It sat and sits in disrepair, and we as a church are putting it together piece by piece, day by day. But with our corporate partners, we're able to move a lot faster. We're building a 4-acre campsite, and we're asking you to partner with that. The campsite will have an amphitheater for learning. It goes down to the Mill Creek here in Cincinnati for kids to get outside and enjoy nature, to learn and to recreate. We're building, the Cincinnati Reds are building a baseball field that will allow kids to get outside and to enjoy the fresh air, to learn the game of baseball. We are also building a soccer field, and soccer is one of the growing sports around the world. General Electric is building a makerspace. The makerspace will allow kids to do 3D printing, coding, and a number of things.
The word I'd use is transformational, right? So we look for projects that all the partners and all these hundreds of volunteers can come in and transform a space into something different, or bring life back to a space that used to be vibrant, that maybe had been run down or what have you. So it's a project that we can transform a space to help transform a community that will then be able to use the space. And this one, by far aligns great on all of those fronts.
The service day itself is really a remarkable undertaking in that you have 400 people descending on one site. You couldn't pick a better location than the Summit Center for that. Work will begin in earnest literally in late June. Resource along with Cincinnati Tool Bank will be there for a volunteer service day. They're going to be moving the hen house. They're going to be getting some painting done. That'll be the first of many smaller satellite projects that lead us up to the Thursday, August 2nd service day. It's really an amazing day, and that day happens in the blink of an eye.
I think great work is done in partnership. I heard Sister Johnetta Cole say on yesterday, she was the former president of Spelman College, and she quoted an African proverb. She said, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so I think it's important that the community join with us, and we partner with the community on helping make this project a reality. And so, and we know that this kind of work takes finances, it takes resources, it takes capital. So we invite people to partner with us. And so whether you give $5 or $5,000, it will be put to good use, and you can come and see the work. You can touch it. It's tangible, and it's already in operation. I think when people believe in you and they believe in what you've already been able to accomplish, when they see the work that we did in Over the Rhine, when they see the work we're doing in Roselawn, and people are looking for a place to be a part of something that has a lasting legacy, then they're more willing to give. And we've had people that I didn't even know were watching and say, Damon, I want to be a part of this. What do you need me to do? So I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. And I think you've gotten a good overview of New Prospect Baptist Church, who we are, what we do, what we're concerned about, and hopefully you share our passion. And so if you've hit the button to give, I just, from the sincerity of my heart, I thank you. And our goal is to be good stewards of whatever you've given, whatever you intend to give. And I invite you to come see us, not just to hit the button, but come be a part of what we're doing. So I love you, and I thank you, and I hope to see you soon.
All right. That. And let me find you all. So that was actually a couple years ago. All of that work now is complete and ongoing. The campsite is up and running. We have partnership with Great Parks. Hamilton County's Great Parks actually runs our campsite. We have a nature center inside of our church. We have a senior day center. As I speak now, the seniors are probably there. We have a fitness center. We have a thrift store. It is an entire community. And of course, we have a church. And it's funny because oftentimes it's like I don't talk about the church because I talk about all these other great things that to me are part of what building a healthy community is. So that's just an overview of New Prospect. But then I want to share with you what Amber defined for you community economic development. I am a firm believer in CED. And as she said, I noticed, because I've worked with the city of Cincinnati, I've worked with corporations, and they all have a department they call community and economic development. And I realized that it was that and that was the problem. The and allowed economic development to happen on one side of the street and quote unquote community on the other side of the street. And community oftentimes meant programs and a few dollars for people in community to do some things, while economic development meant that larger entities were benefiting by, what they were building, the infrastructure, major development. And so the community was oftentimes cut out of the economic development and benefiting from economic development because they were just happy to get community, which were the grants and small things that they were getting. And I saw that in a major way when our church was in Over the Rhine. And that's where I started pastoring 33 years ago. And Over the Rhine, for those who may not know, at that time was considered one of the toughest communities in the state of Ohio, one of the poorest communities in the state of Ohio. And our church was on the corner of Finley and Elm Street. So we were right next to the Finley Market. Finley Market is this age-old market where people come to get produce, and it's a gathering place. So at one point, the city decided to invest, and now it's OTR.
Now it's OTR. It got gentrified and they changed it to initials, OTR.
So I remember Over the Rhine. Now it's OTR. They put $16 million of new money into Finley Market to redo Finley Market. And that's fine. It's an economic development project, but it wasn't a community economic development project. And so even though you put $16 million into refurbishing this age-old market, there were no new opportunities for people who lived in the community. There were no business opportunities for people who lived in the community. And so that was the difference between a CED project, which would have definitely included community and made sure that community benefited from it, not just as a shopper, but as an owner. So I understood that we have to remove the and. So one of the places that I usually go to for great information on CED projects is actually in Canada. North of the border, CED is practiced a lot more heartily than it is down here. So I want to share with you their definition of CED. And this is the CED network in Canada. So here they clearly say rural communities, small towns, city neighborhoods are struggling. But there is an alternative. Local action that creates community-based solutions. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, I know this, but I just want to make sure we get this. Offers community-based solutions that put emphasis on people. Fostering local ownership, tackling poverty and social injustice, developing innovative solutions to environmental issues, creating meaningful jobs and inclusive workplaces, engaging youth and marginalized populations. This is extremely important. Right now at our church, we have, I think, 12 to 15 youth that we were able to hire through the Talbot House here in our city. They are being paid $13 an hour. They can work up to 20 hours a week if they're like at 17 years of age. It starts at age 14. And we are actually training them. And I'll talk maybe a little more about what they're doing now. They actually have an indoor grow. We have people training them. We're doing career work with them, helping them determine and define and understand what possible careers are out there. And we have people from the community who are coming in to talk to them about nursing and respiratory therapy and a lot of different things. But CED engages youth and marginalized populations, building knowledge and the capacity of local people, improving access to capital for community development, so this is happening all across Canada. Communities are changing their future by building fairer, more sustainable economies. So I would encourage you, when you get time, to look up community economic development work that's being done in Canada. And this is actually being done through, it's called the Canadian CED Network. And you will see a lot of powerful stories, especially as they work with First Nations people in Canada. A lot of powerful stories, how they are transforming community. So I've learned a lot. Because I actually joined, I'm a member of that network because it's just a lot of great information. So CED for me, and then of course you may know that I wrote something about a couple years ago entitled Becoming Joshua, which for me was my personal transformation as a pastor and leader, civil rights leader, social justice person, or however people define that, from wanting to be like the Moses delivering my people to deciding that, you know, after Moses, there was a Joshua, and whose task was to build, possess the land and to build. And I really feel that in a lot of our, especially urban centers, there's a necessity, not just to deliver people from the injustices that we may face, but people who focus on building, possessing, creating. And we've definitely been working on that. In the city of Cincinnati and across a lot of urban centers, we're dealing with a lot of dysfunction. So right now in the city of Cincinnati, if you're here, you know, in the last, I don't know, a couple of weeks, we've had roving groups of young people who have just gone down into the city center and just beat people up. I mean, just 12 to 15, you know, young people who just attack another person. They've attacked two elderly people and they attacked a young person and just stomped them to the ground, beat them unconscious. These are the kind of things that we have to address as a community. So it's a matter of, you know, and of course you hear all of the people discussing it like, you know, it's a parental issue, it's a school issue, you know, and it's probably all of the above. But it's an issue of, you know, how do we address these young people? What do we put in place to bring about a change of heart? How do we teach empathy? And I honestly believe CED is one of the ways you do that. So I'm going to share like 4 more stories, and then I want us to have a discussion. Here's what I wrestle with. especially as it relates to the African American community. There are smaller ethnic minorities in this country that control major economic sectors. So let me say that again. There are smaller ethnic minorities in this country that control major economic sectors. And I'm sure they have their problems, and I'm sure they have their struggles. But you don't see roving gangs of these smaller groups running around cities and beating people up. So the first one I want to share is, I know some of you probably heard of the Patel Motel Cartel. Anybody heard of that? No? All right.
Patel, that's the innkeeper, quote, caste, unquote, of India and Pakistan.
Yes, here we go. Patel, let me share that. 1 second. Here we go. And I'll share it from this article because it also says some great things. So this is from New York Times Magazine. So just so you know, the Patel Motel Cartel is because the American Indian community, over 70% of motels in this country. So the American Indian community controls over 70% of motels in this country. And if you add hotels, it's another 30-something%.
Say hello, especially to James Keys. James Keys is on our Family and Consumer Sciences team. And when Pastor Lynch was talking about the senior center that's doing day center, actually James is doing some diabetes awareness, and he's also done some get out and move and exercises with the seniors at that center. And I believe he was on there out there today. So that is one of the ways that we try to partner with the different groups. Also, Nadia, thank you for joining us. She is the owner of the Agra Academy down here in Cincinnati. So I'm putting her on the spot because I'm just letting you know you will be invited to come and on the show and give us a lot of things that great things that you were doing in the urban ag space. So that's just your fair warning. So we look forward to having you on a future show. And then the elders of the group, Dr. Julian Lynn Walker and Omape Daiboiku, who we affectionately call Mama O. They are based in Columbus and Dayton, respectively. And they do a lot of great work in that urban ag space and the creative placemaking space, mentoring. They're kind of all trades and our wise counsel. I like to refer to them as that. So thank you for joining us today. Jody, thank you for joining us. Miss Alberta, thank you for joining us. And Miss Ivy, thank you for joining us today as well. Pastor Lynch has logged out. He's going to be logging back in, so hopefully that'll clear it up. But are there any questions so far? Well, one of the things that I would like to point out when his part of the presentation regarding how, I kind of said what the system looks like for community economic development in a definition, but he added the how and the why to it, right? And just to give you, just to confirm how on point he was, we have a National Association of Community Development Extension Professionals, commonly referred to as NACDEP. And all of those things he mentioned are in the list of priorities on how you use community and development. So even though he was quoting an organization that was in Canada, is really kind of a worldwide ways to or standardized ways to approach community and economic development in today's time, or community development, as we also refer it to. So just wanted to point that out. Also with the church, it's really unique because it's in the city, but it's on a 20-acre site. So you're lucky normally if you can get 1 or 2 acres, right? 3 or 4 acres, maybe 5, but 20 acres. And when he was speaking of the Mill Creek, what he didn't tell you is that is a part of community and development, that waterway. Our Greater Cincinnati Waterworks, as well as our Metropolitan Sewer District, uses that waterway, which is further south, about 10 miles south of where the church is, in their processing. So there are a lot of opportunities to do research and experiential learning for the kids. And I believe Dr. Walker had a question. Come on in, let's jump in on a conversation. And
Okay,
then
thank
James, if you have
you.
something to say, jump in afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to really go back to Ambrose when he said that he began acknowledging that today is the first day of Black Liberation Month, and he mentioned the first extension worker. And I'd like to take us back a bit further and acknowledge the indigenous knowledge systems by which the information, the paradigms, the ways of approaching life were developed quite early and have survived in various ways to today. And my work is primarily in agriculture, and I look at a lot of agricultural systems and practices. But I want to just briefly go to jurisprudence, because, for instance, in South Africa, there are equality courts, and in our society, we have the criminal courts. If you do something wrong, you go to jail. Sometimes you make some form of restitution. If it's a civil case, then you generally pay. You make someone whole that way. But in South Africa, for instance, in the equality courts, there are 13 different remedies to make someone whole. And it can start with something as simple as an apology. All right. But it is what makes somebody whole is not necessarily money or putting them in court. And I bring into this discussion with respect to how best can we work with large institutions that come into the community and have the resources to make a contribution, but perhaps aren't sensitive to the values of the community. So is there anyone in the group currently, for instance, who has used a good neighbor agreement with a corporation coming in that focuses on values, not necessarily on projects? So if we say we recognize and respect the youth of the community, and Pastor Lynch at the end was using, the example about, those thugs, and we all know about the Kia boys, et cetera. But if we say we recognize and support our youth, and that's a value, as opposed to saying, let's start a workforce development program, because you can put a workforce development program in, but you don't actually recognize the trauma that our youth have experienced that put them where they are today in many cases. So I'll stop there to say, has anyone thought about a good neighbor agreement where a community unites with a corporation around values? And then over time, you come up with a project based on those values.
So personally, I have done that in previous roles in the community economic development before coming to Central State. In the programming that I do, I don't necessarily do that I'm doing now. I don't necessarily do a formal agreement, which I probably should, but I reiterate and clarify that has to be part of the model before doing any kind of programming, even when it's with adults. It's not just with youth. We always, as a CD team, talk about impact well after we're here, and those values have to be reiterated and incorporated in order for you to maintain programming. So that's something we do, but I haven't really done a formal agreement.
Okay, thank you.
And James, did you have something to say, or Miss Nadia?
No, you were just mentioning earlier about, to me, and being at the Bland Senior Center in Cincinnati at New Prospect. And yeah, so today I kicked off a 6-week diabetes education class. And I know that the church had did one also with UC. And because the seniors are there, and they don't all or don't have diabetes, but it's good for people who maybe, have family members or know someone or maybe pre-diabetic. So it's a great 6-week program that we did week 1 today, and then we're going to start off with module 2 in 2 weeks, as I'm out of town next week. But open to anyone there. They had 31 today in the room, so it was a great participation and really a group discussion about diabetes and how it's impacting the lives of a lot of people. So a lot of good questions, and some that I couldn't answer today that I'll do research on and get back. So yeah, thank you, Pastor Lynch.
Yeah, thank you for being there today.
You're welcome.
That's one of the things I'm extremely proud of, is our Senior Day Center. Yeah. And so did I get knocked off or something?
Yeah, you got knocked off.
Okay,
and then you froze, and then you dropped. I know you were on a roll.
Yeah.
So while you were gone, I was just talking about how James is working a lot with your senior center, and that with the amphitheater area, the outdoor youth area, how it presents an opportunity for experiential learning, not just with just basic life skills, but with research and water management, because that's part of the Cincinnati Water Works and our Greater Cincinnati Metropolitan Sewer District water management system, right? So those are some unique opportunities there. And then we got in a discussion about how do you work with the different stakeholders, especially corporate, and partnering them with the community, which is everyone on this call works in that dynamic on some aspect, right? And Dr. Walker had talked about posed to the group, do we have a good neighbor agreement that we use in our work? And I was saying how I haven't used that in this role here at Central State as a formal agreement, but it's ingrained in how I deliver programming, and anybody I partner with, I'm even vetting for how they do whatever we're going to be doing together, because that value, that's very important, especially when we're dealing with youth, especially when we're just dealing with sustainability and just the development of our community, and making sure the community has a strong voice at the table, that it doesn't get squashed in the process, right? So just because someone's bringing in resources.
Yeah, and I think a good neighbor.
And that's where we left off, and then you came back on.
Okay, a good neighbor agreement, not just with the corporations and institutions, but one of the institutions that dots our communities are churches. And the more the churches realize that they are not just faith-based, but place-based, which means that you literally take up space in these communities. And so if a good neighbor agreement can be framed to use for that institution, and I think it could really help to grow and help build sustainable communities. So I don't know who the sister was who was speaking.
That was Dr. Julia Lynn Walker.
Okay, about the work being done in South Africa. But if there is a model of good neighbor agreement, I think churches would be should really take advantage of that.
Okay, there are a couple of examples, and I can share them with the CSU team.
All right.
Okay, share that, and we'll make sure we'll get that information out. Just want to highlight some of the things that were put in the chat. So there's a book, as Pastor Lynch, he is an author. So that book information is a free download. We also put in a link for the Canadian CED network, and also a link to the church so you can see the other CED programs that they're working on. So getting back to the youth, they are a critical part, correct? So that's where you left off, Pastor Lynch.
Yeah, because I did, and I think where I went to, I was
And we were
talking
talking
about,
about the motels too.
right, okay, so you heard that, the Battelle
Yes.
Motel Cartel. I
Yes.
then talked about how, because I was asking you guys questions, I wasn't getting any feedback. I'm like, where are they? So I asked, did anybody remember a woman by the name of Tippi Hedren? Anybody old enough to remember Tippi Hedren?
Yeah, I remember Tippi in the movie.
The movie The Birds, right, with Alfred Hitchcock. Well, Tippi Hedren.
Oh, I remember that movie.
Okay. And the reason I bring her up is that she's the one who helped start the Cambodian Vietnamese community in the nail care industry. And so now that smaller ethnic minority community controls nail care in this country, billion-dollar industry. And I think I was mentioning, you probably heard me ask you, guys, what was a nonlinear economic sector? You got that right. Did you hear that?
No.
No? Can anybody tell me what a nonlinear economic sector is? You just take a guess.
Where the money comes back in a circle instead of going out in a straight line.
That sounds good. Yeah, I like that. That's the multiplying effect of a dollar. Now, a nonlinear economic sector is when a group controls an economic sector that is not tied to history, heritage, or culture. So when I tell you that the American Indian community controls motels and hotels, it's not tied to history, heritage, or culture. If I tell you that the Cambodian Vietnamese community controls nail care in this country, these are billion-dollar economic sectors. If I tell you that the Ethiopian community controls parking, and I saw that just the other day, I parked in downtown Cincinnati, the attendant was of Ethiopian descent. And what I was doing while I was gone, I was actually sharing these stories, and you can just look them up. Just ask, why does the Ethiopian community control parking? You'll learn about Henok Tesfaye, who started it in Washington, D.C. And if you live in Cincinnati, if you park at any of those little places where you can park, if there's an attendant, 9 times out of 10, he or she is of Ethiopian descent. It's a nonlinear economic sector. If you want to know why the Indian Arab community owns almost every gas station across this country, and I used to think it was just like in the Black neighborhood until I went to Kenwood and Montgomery, and they own all of them. It's like, my goodness, nonlinear economic sectors. If I ask you, why does the Korean community control Black hair care? If you go into any of these hair care stores, which is pretty much Black hair care, because if you pull up to one and sit outside and wait for a white person to walk in, you may be sitting there for 3 or 4 days. Doesn't make sense but it's a nonlinear economic sector, not tied to history, heritage, or culture. And those of us in the African American community who've been here over 400 years, we ask ourselves, what economic sector do we control other than major economic consumer? And all of these that I just mentioned happened since the 1970s. So we have to figure out, is there an economic sector that we can control? It can be nonlinear, or it can be linear. It can be something tied to history, heritage, and culture. And maybe it should be something tied to history, heritage, and culture that our young people can see, because they are some of the major consumers. You know, one of the things that I don't know, where you guys live or where you shop, but I spend a lot of time in Roselawn. I spend a lot of time in the little stores, and the interaction that I see is just is sad. You know, the back and forth between the store owner who's behind this glass and the person who comes in, and I mean, they literally cuss each other out, but the transaction still happens. It's like, I'm just sitting there like, this is crazy. You know, they literally will cuss each other out and still buy, I don't know what they call the little cigarettes or whatever it is. I don't know. And I just dropped my head. So one of the things we've looked at is the energy sector. I think the energy sector is still a possibility. I'm part of Green Umbrella. I've worked with Green Umbrella and some other people here in our city, especially around churches, because one of the things that are hurting churches as well as our people, when people come to New Prospect for help, it's for a number of different things: it's rent, food, or gas and electric bill, energy cost. And people can end up homeless because of energy cost. And I'll try one more time, then I'll be quiet to see if this is shareable. There are, let's see if it's on my screen. That won't come up, but I have copies of what's called a low-income solar policy guide, which is a roadmap to successful policies and programs that are creating access to solar technology and jobs nationwide. There are people working on this, and I just, for some reason, think that it is something that it's an opportunity. I think it's an opportunity. I want to see solar panels on every home in Roselawn. I want to see, and I want us to control it. You know, so I think we need to be thinking about it. It's fine for everybody to go to college and become a professional, and we all have our degrees and letters behind our names. But as a community, what economic sector out there that after 400 years, should we be, who should be controlling fried chicken but us? You know, so there's a place in Bond Hill. I saw it one day. They had all these lights and banners that said hooks, fish, and chicken. I'm like, oh man, somebody just opened up a new chicken spot. Let me check it out. And I went in and I just walked right back out. I was like, it's like, where are we? You know, I know we're professionals. I know a lot of us are doing well, but as a broader community, I just think we have to reorient our thinking back to where our thinking used to be. The four major pillars that made the Black community strong, which was the Black church, Black businesses, Black schools, and the Black press. If all of those fall apart, then we're all just out here as individuals. So I think we have some challenges. We have some challenges. If you listen to Dr. King's last speech on April 3rd, 1968, that's what he talked about. He understood those challenges, and a lot of those challenges for us, many of them are economic in nature.
And we had a comment in the chat from Ivy Thompson, and she said, let's move cautiously with solar because decommissioning solar introduces another set of environmental and health concerns. So we do need to be aware of all the pluses and minuses that goes along with that. But we know that that's one of the growing, probably one of the fastest growing sectors or industries. I know here at Cincinnati State Technical College, they started a few years back, welding, but it's welding because they know that the energy sector needs a lot of welders, right? It's not welders to go into a steel mill. You see the even when you go to like Target and Myers, now they have these charging stations. So we know just from the way, if they're investing that in their retail areas, then you know those charging stations may be eventually outplacing or be just as popular as a gas station, right? So those are other opportunities as this industry is growing and being more formalized, regulated, unregulated, however it may be. And then the solar panels, it has both positive and negative impacts on agriculture. It helps with the energy, but the issue is where they're placing them is taking up the valuable land that you need to grow. It's using prime spaces instead of spaces that might not be as conducive for agriculture.
Yeah, I saw that. I took my daughter to camp this summer it's an Episcopal camp. You may know where it is. It's in Ohio.
Mhm.
And it was funny, as I took her there, it's a lot of farmland and there's big signs everywhere, no land for solar. So they're clear on that. They're not going to give up that land for solar. I understand that.
Yeah.
Um,
And then Nadia, in the comment she made, was energy is a part of natural resources, which falls within agriculture, which is true. We need to control more of the agriculture industry, not just the farming sector. Solar farms could be set up on acres of land that can provide power to a community.
Yep.
So agriculture
It-
is going to be here regardless, right? We all need to eat and live, and agriculture touches on all of that. And solar is one way, as you pointed out, that I agree that we need to be more concerted in our efforts to get into and be a major player or stakeholder in that space.
Amber, can I jump in a real quick second? We are coming up on our 3 o'clock hour, and I know we have our hard set rule. It's CED Office Hour Live. If Pastor Lynch is willing to stay on a little longer, can we maybe modify just
Yes,
this
we
time, maybe
can.
an additional 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. But Pastor Lynch, if
Sure.
if you have more time to stay with us.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted
then,
to put that out
some
there
of
because
you know,
we usually just cut off.
all right, thank you. That I engaged in the medical marijuana sphere. I saw that as another major economic opportunity, and hard to get into, but people are going to build wealth again. So I'm just saying we need to look at what is out there. So when I talk to you about the Patel Motel cartel, or with the Vietnamese controlling I'm not mad at any of them. But can we learn from that? And are we looking ahead? Are we looking forward? Because when you control a major economic sector, then you can send your kids to college for free with no student loan debt. And what's happening now is that first generation who did that, their kids went off to college and they're coming home saying, I really don't want to go sell hair to Black people. I'm glad you guys did that and you sent me to college and I got this degree, but I'm not to come home and sell hair. And their parents are aging out, opportunities will open up. And we have to be prepared to say, all right, I will buy your store, or help me to understand how this whole vertical market works, from manufacturing all the way to retail. I don't know. You guys, what I love about what you all do is you're the think tank. I mean, we need this. We need you to bring us together and say, look, how do we get this done? What are the opportunities? Where are the people who are trying to make things happen? When we talk about our youth, I just don't think we engage them enough, and they don't see this. I don't know what's happening in our local school systems and how they're being taught. So for me, the church is one place to do it. I teach our kids to think. I grew up with my father always taught me, if a person can beat you thinking, they'll beat you living every time. And
yes, I've heard him say that oftentimes.
He told me that forever as a kid growing up. And it was usually on times when I was doing something stupid. And he would say, boy, if a person can beat you thinking, they'll beat you living every time. So I set out in life not to let people outthink me. I try not to let people outwork me, but you may work harder. I'll give you that. But definitely not outthink me. I don't care who you are.
So Ivy had a couple comments as well. She was saying that the rooftop and developed land meaning things like parking lots, those are solar opportunities. And really, water and climate change is an opportunity. It's a blue collar economy as far as jobs and ownership. So there are a lot of opportunities in that space. And even within extension on a national level, they have started a national extension climate initiative, and they're looking at these things. And USDA has also put out various RFPs for people to demonstrate or develop in these spaces. So that is something that the USDA is looking at.
Hey, as I listen to what you shared with us today, Pastor Lynch, one of the first notes I wrote down and question I wanted to just sort of ask about is the idea of vision, because the things that you've talked about in terms of changing or building these solutions, there has to be vision, but you've engaged corporate partners, governmental partners. From my experience, many folks who are in like government, they don't really have a lot of vision that you see coming out of there. So what has been your experience, or what are your thoughts on where the vision originates, and how does someone get others to buy into it or to somehow move that along?
Yeah, good question. I've always had vision. When our church was in Over the Rhine, we purchased the entire city block, and it was part of vision comes from, well, obviously seeing the opportunity and seeing it as opportunity. So when I was part of active with ABCD, which is asset-based community development, what other people saw as something that was wrong or deficient, we saw the other part of it. We saw it as opportunity. So when I got to Over the Rhine, this is 33 years ago, at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic, I literally watched people die. I had never seen a person die before, like just watch the person die. We're sitting in church one day, we came out, we hear gunshots, and right by my office, there are 3 young men laying on top of each other, dying. Literally, it's like when we first saw them, they were alive. Like 2 minutes later, they're all dead. I watched people die from the scourge of crack cocaine. I used to see people come in the church and their lips would be all burned up. I'm like, why are your lips all burned up? Because at that time, they would break off the antennas of people's cars to smoke this cocaine. And of course, it would burn their lips up. I'm like, and I realized that this is going to be hard to deal with. I learned quickly that to me, crack cocaine was from the pits of hell. This is from the devil. And I had to figure out, how do I engage? How do I change people's lives in a major way? But my point, what I was going to get to, is that city block that we purchased. When I got there, it was all occupied. There was the food stamp store, there was the clothing store, there was the bar, there was a pharmacy, there was Younger's Cafe and Globe Furniture, and then the church. I don't know what if it was like 5 or 10 years later, everything was gone but the church and Globe Furniture. The entire block was gone. So now it's just the church on one end, Globe Furniture on the other, and a bunch of empty buildings. All the housing upstairs, everybody gone, all the businesses gone. So to me, that's like a no-brainer. Let's buy this property and put it back together. I don't even know if that took vision. It's like, this is just right in front of us. It's almost like just open your eyes. So we purchased the whole block and start putting it back together, building by building.
And I would say it is vision, because when you did it, you did a comprehensive plan for that whole block.
Mm-hmm.
And for the audience, the Finley Market that he said that the city was putting $16 million in, this is directly across the street. Right. So this is an example of how there was economic development going on, but the community wasn't benefiting from that in that regard. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I agree. I'm never I'll never impressed by this stuff. I appreciate what we've been able to do, but I just see so much more to do. But I think you're right. You said political leaders, they will frustrate you. But business leaders tend to have vision. Politicians, they will frustrate the heck out of you. And you can go share your vision with them and try to get them to see the vision, or even just ask them, what is your larger vision? And I think sometimes they're just afraid. I don't know, it just frustrates you. So, but working with the business community tends to bring more fruit because you're working with visionaries, as opposed to trying to work with politicians who always feel like they're hamstrung or who feel like they're protecting the budget. That one frustrates me too. Because if I were elected official, the money would fly out the door for things that I felt were going to build healthy communities. But all of a sudden they become protectors of the budget. So I don't know. Somebody else may have a better answer on how people get vision.
Well, I guess to that point, Dr. Walker, are you still on with us? And you were talking about the good neighbor agreements, and it brought to mind community benefit agreements, and sort of, it sounds like a sort of a similar kind of approach. Is that one way where sort of this vision is sort of brought in between these different sectors and sort of shared?
Yes, and my point was really, it's really, and it was interesting, this discussion in terms of, it was values versus projects. So if we commit, if we're visionaries and we commit to the community, then there are things that we want the community to do or ways we want the community to be, and that from there, you then have different discussions about what does it take to actually do that. So like the market, they put the market in and their perception is, well, consumers benefit. But if there's a discussion with the community before the market goes in, then the question is, well, actually, I had this discussion last week with Linkus, this project here in Columbus where they're going to tear up 3 major streets and put in a new sort of rapid rail system, but it's not really, it's buses, but it's a new, kind of rail system. So my question was, it's a 2 or 3 year project. To what extent has there been discussion with the community about the workforce needs so that people are plugged in, not, yes, at the level of short-term construction jobs, I do want to eat today, but is there also training and acknowledgement that the community as a whole can fill anything, any job, any need connected with the projects? Because we tend to look at the underskilled short-term positions as opposed to marketing, or even how do we put in place long job skills training, so that people at the end of the construction of this link, then people can go on and work other places. That's the kind of a discussion that sometimes I think we fail to have. And something happens in our community, it's a once-off, it walks out the door, it's over. And afterwards people say, well, the community, they didn't care. It's the blame falls on the community. And it really wasn't the community's fault because it wasn't value-centered at the beginning.
Well, that's true, but that's part of that. The problem is that you don't have that visionary person. You have people who are influential, but they're not necessarily visionaries. And Ivy asked the question, how do you encourage the community elders to pivot to a different vision? And then I'll go back to, after this discussion, I will bring out Nadia's comment as well. So that's question I want to pose to the group. How do you encourage the community elders to pivot to a different vision, or just anybody that are community leaders, the informal ones? Because a lot of times they say they want this, but then when you get it, it's something short term and immediate. There's no long term impact kind of thinking. And I think that's where a lot of, just my personal opinion, a lot of the community benefits agreements fall short. They think of just right now, or they think 100,000 is big money. That funds an office for a year and a part-time staff person. I mean, it's no long-term vision attached to that.
I guess what comes to mind as you mentioned that and the comment that Dr. Walker was making before, the idea, the notion comes to mind of, because I've seen it as well, that the community, or different segments within the community, be it the nonprofits or the churches and other groups, they're not ready. When opportunity presents itself, they're not ready or have the capacity to take advantage of it, to negotiate the different contracts, to understand what the transaction involves, to put in place a development agreement and control or influence how many jobs stay in the community, or they're not ready. And it just brings to mind that saying where folks say, be ready so you don't have to get ready. It's like by time someone gets close to getting ready, the opportunity is gone. So to me, that's one factor that they got to be ready, so they don't have to get ready.
So one of the things that Ivy put in the chat, and she's in Maryland, that she agrees with the view that construction jobs are temporary. In Maryland, national-owned firms provide additional training in, for example, in this construction and landscaping and forestry, so that the staff can transition to other jobs. So that's one way to address that. So even though they have this short-term construction project that might be, say, a year to 18 months, along the way, they're giving them training into longer term type of jobs. And then Nadia agreed with that. And then Eric said that Dr. Walker's story also makes him ask the question, who owned the land that was purchased to put in the line? Something I've learned from Reverend Lynch's stories is the importance of ownership of assets.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, Ambrose is right. You have to be ready, and if you're not ready, act like you're ready. Just you got to go.
Yeah.
There, faith does play a part in this. Whatever successes that we may have had, a lot of it was on faith. I didn't know if things were going to work. I didn't know if people were going to show up. My last major battle in this city, I lost. This was recently. The city of Cincinnati was selling its railroad line to Norfolk Southern Railroad for $1.6 billion, and they were all excited about it. And the city promised the community, you're going to get your potholes fixed, and you're going to get a new rec center and all this stuff. I knew that Southern Railroad was built by slaves. And again, all you have to do is Google railroads. If you type in railroads and slavery or railroads and reparations, either one of those, you will see across the world, railroads are paying reparations for what they did. They're paying reparations to the Jewish community because they were complicit in taking people to their death camps. And railroads to this day are paying reparations to the Jewish community. Railroads were built with slave labor. And I'm saying to our city, here's an excellent opportunity to call for reparations. Cincinnati owned the rail line, 300 something miles of rail line from Cincinnati to Tennessee that Norfolk Southern is using. Norfolk Southern purchased Southern Railroad, which benefited from slave labor. And then once the railroad line here was built, it was built by labor of Black men who were in jail. But I couldn't get us to see that. We were just they promised us new streets and sidewalks, and we're like, hey, and we went for it. So I mean, you don't win every battle, and people, you know, it is a struggle. I would encourage everybody this Black History Month to watch the movie Rustin, if you haven't seen it, on Netflix. Powerful example of community organizing. Powerful example of what Bayard Rustin was able to do to get that March on Washington done in 1963 with Dr. King. Just powerful example of community organizing.
And Mama O had a question.
I do. I want to go back to something that someone said about how do we get our elders to pivot. I want the word elder qualified so I can understand what age group they might be speaking of. And then I may have
I can answer that. It's basically 70 on up.
Well, then I qualify to speak in this category because I'm over 70. I personally, one of the reasons why I have been able to be so malleable in my aging is because I listen to my 30-year-old children, because I know that the world that's coming is their world, and they have to help define what it's going to be. And those of us who are not yet extinct, but are no longer on the cutting edge of progress, we have to, I think what would help, and it's part of what I'm thinking about being able to facilitate here in Dayton, is some cross-generational visioning experiences that lower animosity and maybe even do it in the vein of a fantasy game so that there's none of that, I know more than you do, you ain't lived long enough to know much. Because our children are not our future, they're our now. You know, my son just walked off his job the other day because he said, Mommy, I am more valuable working for myself than trying to meet these people's social expectations because they get bent out of shape because of the way I speak. I'm sorry I don't have a Valley Girl. No, he didn't say he was sorry. I don't have a Valley Girl voice, he says to me. So that when his deepness, just like my voice, when it comes out, my passion is often misunderstood as anger. So I think that one of the things that I will definitely be working on is how do we ease our aging elders into a futuristic perspective where their wisdom can guide but not smother.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say this to Pastor Lynch. I watched you since you was in your 20s. I commend you for leading the legacy because I know you got some ancestors standing back there going, go, go, go.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I got some ancestors up in Dayton too. A lot of my family's in Dayton. Yeah.
Then we'll expect you to come visit Edgemont Solar Garden.
I will do that.
Please put that on your calendar.
You know what? I was working with a guy out of Dayton. I think he may put that together. Oh shoot. What's his who?
Dean Lovelace?
No, it wasn't Dean. I'll try to remember.
How recently was it?
This was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, Steve Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not here right now, but his spirit definitely fills up this place.
Okay.
Oh, he's just not in the building.
Oh, he's here, but he's just not in the building. That's what I was told.
All right. Good. Thank you.
We will remind him that he knows you and remind him of the great things that you've mentioned here today.
Good.
He's the executive director here at Greater Edgemont Community Coalition.
Okay, great. How's Daryl Ward and what they were doing when they bought the college? How's that going?
Oh, sir, they have made a in the city village.
Good.
Between the housing, they put a child development center, working with one of their young people to create a community garden for the housing complex that they've built. They're doing very well.
Good, good.
And Junior is leading the church, and he's
Right.
doing very well also.
Right.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I have one more comment that I wanted to get in, and it's a little bit of a shift, but it was going back to when you were talking about what kind of things that we can be looking
Right.
to as a community to kind of be that nonlinear, linear sectors. And Nadia Ruffin said that Black people should get into growing hemp, not medical marijuana. Processing the hemp is also a huge opportunity. There are thousands of products that can be produced from hemp, but most people just settle with flowers for smoking, gummies, and CBD oil. We could produce hemp plastic products, paper products, etc. So there's numerous spin-offs from growing hemp versus just medical marijuana is what I took away from that. And actually, Nadia is here in Cincinnati, Pastor Lynch, so I do want to connect you two.
I know Nadia.
Oh, okay. Well then, you already know why, and you know why I told her that, she's been voluntold. She didn't know it yet, but we're gonna need to bring her on the show for all the good things that she's doing as well.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a non-linear economic sector.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Some brothers and sisters out here may say, "No, we own that one." No, but now you can use hemp for actually building projects. You can make bricks out of it. So yeah, there's a lot there to do. Yeah.
Okay, so we appreciate everybody.
Oh, so let me say this because I know we have to get off, and I have to go pick up my daughter. We got to figure out some stuff to do. I mean, I love these discussions. Again, we're sitting on 20 acres of land in Roselawn, and I don't think we've fully benefited, and we've got all this space and stuff. And I just want the community to come and look at it. I've been there at this church 33 years, and I think I've got some more years left in me. Let's do something. Let's show something to our community. Let's put our heads together.
Well, I'm always open to meet with you so we can plan the next community development project. You notice I took out the and. I'm a quick learner. Right. And see what else we can do and leverage all the resources that we have available and make something happen.
Well, to that point, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Amber, there. But some of the work that we're doing to what Pastor Lynch is saying, Amber we have been sort of pulling together some groups and some interactions of groups, communities across the state. So using our role as extension, and having these conversations, and if you look at the call today, we have different cities across the state that are represented, and these are some very I think active and impactful individuals and groups in their different areas. So to the point that you're saying, I just think that if we just build upon this, because I don't know of another model of happening, and I think we're at the sort of the beginning of something here anyway. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, because we do have some conversations that are going on within that we're trying to facilitate as extension.
Okay. And actually, Pastor Lynch knows about that. We had an offline conversation, so he's going to be joining that. And yes, Ivy, I will add the Pendleton Heritage Center to that convening as well.
All right.
All right. Well, this concludes. Before we stop, do you have any parting words or words of encouragement, or kind of you all go forth and do this kind of directives for us, Pastor Lynch?
Let's see. From Hill Street Blues, he said, "Be safe out there." No, enjoy this February. It's leap year. We got 29 days of Black History Month. We got one extra day of Black History Month. Let's be powerful about it. All right.
All right. Well, thank you. And this concludes today's edition of CED Office Hour Live, Building Local Community and Economic Development Ecosystems. And next week, we will be having Allison DeSantis from the Ohio Secretary of State, and she will be talking about the Corporate Transparency Act and the beneficial owners information for small businesses. So until next week, you all have a great week, and we'll see you next Thursday online at 2 p.m. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.